Hey, what's up guys? Sir Emanon here and welcome to another video. So right here you're looking at my very first draft for the Danger Tearlament Lunalight deck that I've been working on for the past couple of days or so. So yeah, it's good to be back into the game. Kind of sat down and read all the cards about a week or so ago. And between the two predominant decks of the format being Spright and Tearlament, immediately I gravitated towards Tearlament. I think the deck is really dynamic and interesting. It has virtually no ceiling. It can do pretty much whatever you want in the game. It has a lot of versatility, flexibility, adaptability to basically cater towards whatever the format is or whatever board you want to build, which I think is super cool. So yeah, I'm really excited to play this deck, and I kind of explored various different options and hybrids, looking at lists from Euros, YCS Rio, as well as Oceanics. But one thing that I kind of thought about in the back of my mind was, hey, what if we combine this with Lunalights? Me of course being the Lunalight enthusiast, that's obviously something I'm going to be thinking about. When you see all the milling effects, as well as the fact that the Danger build naturally wants to opt into Curious, which is something that Lunalights classically benefited from, I think that this is definitely a good marriage between the two sort of archetypes, because they sort of share a common goal. And you might be asking, why would you pick a Lunalight Engine to kind of supplement the Tearlament deck with when it's already fine enough on its own? I think that in exchange for putting a relatively large engine into this deck, what you get in return is a kind of a separate access to extend and break boards with, right? So like, your opponent's obviously going to be able to try and interact with you, especially when you're going second on your Tearlament effects engrave, or just like try and stop particular choke points, things like Hcabe, for instance. But you can kind of follow up with the Lunalights if you get enough mill power going, and you can actually enable a lot of rank 4 plays, which is really strong. That's what Lunalights have been known for in the past. And I think that it just gives the deck another dimension to sort of work off of, which I think is super cool. This is very much a preliminary build. I haven't done a lot of extensive testing. It's primarily theory, as well as some testing with friends over the past week or so, but I do intend on taking this deck to locals to try things out. I'm not going to Niagara since, I wasn't really actively in the game at the time that registration went up and such, so I would be grossly underprepared. But I do want to prepare and test for potentially YCS Minneapolis and stuff. So if you guys want to see me play this deck at locals or record footage from my dueling book or stuff like that, let me know down in the comments below, because I am very excited, and this is the most excited I've been for a deck since probably Trebigate Luralisk about a year ago. So I really do like this concept, and let's go ahead and just talk about it for a bit. So first up, for the Tearlament names, we have 2 Reinhardt, 3 Sheeran, 3 Havness, and 3 Merle. I think most of this is pretty standard, apart from Reinhardt being at 2. I kind of tinkered around with different numbers for this. You can definitely make a case for 1. You can make a case for 3. I initially had 3 in here just because it is a very reliable play, just to get your Tearlament engine going. But I also think it's the most susceptible to getting stopped, and it's the most obvious choke point, because it's very clear when if you are normal summoning Reinhardt, what that is going to accomplish. And one of the big, advantages of playing other engines that facilitate these Tearlaments is to kind of mask sort of what the choke points are, and it gives the opponent a lot harder of a time to sort of react to what you're doing, and makes the choke points much less definitive. So I wanted to shave down Reinhardt not only for that reason, but also because alongside Collider Check, it is an additional normal summon, and we do not want to have too many of those clogging up our hand. But you do want a decent amount of this card, because Collider is very much an important piece to this deck, both for setting up boards and helping around Dark Ruler with Sulic, for instance, or of course just for going second and breaking boards. So I do want to see this card, sometimes, but not all the time. But anyways, we have 3 Sheeran, 3 Havness, 3 Merle. These are all, I think, pretty standard for the most part. You want to maximize on the Tearlament names that you are going to fuse with, because these are sort of the backbone and the heart and soul of the deck that allow you to pretty much raise your ceiling to infinite levels. And I think that you want to mill any of these, despite the fact that some of them are better to draw than others. You just want to get these into rotation. Sheeran is particularly very interesting in Lunalight, simply because its effect to send a monster from your hand to the graveyard is obviously part of an effect and not a discard cost or anything. So it does trigger stuff like your Yellow Martin as well as your Emerald Bird from the Lunalight portion, so it helps synergize with that. And even in worst case scenarios where you find yourself milling 3 and preying off of either your Sheeran or your Merle, sometimes it gets you there. And the cool thing is that there are times where, let's say maybe if you want to have this on your opponent's turn 0, which I found that in certain matchups, like the Tearlament Mirror, you probably don't want to be doing, but in other matchups, maybe Flow Wanderers, you do want to be doing. It is nice to be able to have additional good quality targets to be able to just randomly mill off your Havness. That is something to note, rather than just trying to hit the other theoretically 8 or fewer Tearlament names to fuse with. So that's kind of like something else to take note of, but that's relatively minor, all things considered. But yeah, Sharon being level 4 body, definitely really good, of course, with the Lunalight package, because again, it excels at just generating rank 4s like there's no tomorrow. And I do like that synergistic aspect. Having similarly as well. They don't offer a lot in this deck necessarily that other Tearlament builds don't already, but I still think that they are obviously worth their spots at these ratios. And then 3 of the field spell, 1 terraforming. I thought about not playing the terraforming. I actually wasn't playing terraforming for a bit, but the field spell is really important. So you do want to get access to it. And it's just another name. Obviously, we all know how good the field spell is. And then 2 copies of Sulik. I'm also like not playing the meta noise, which is a trend that I saw that a lot of people were doing as well recently. And it makes a lot of sense. This is like the far superior card to mill, and this deck does a fair bit of milling. It does about as much milling as the Danger Tearlament build, because like that's functionally what it is until like you get to the Lunalight core or portion of it later into the game. In most cases, that's how the games will go anyways. So yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It's like really good to draw, really good to mill. And so this is kind of like your primary interruption piece if you, for example, get Dark Rulered. So yeah, I really do like this ad too. So I think the Tearlament stuff is pretty self-explanatory. I don't have to really talk about this too much because you guys have all been playing this format, I assume, much more than I have as of recent. And then for the Lunalight stuff, this is where things get pretty interesting. So we have 3 Kaleido Chick, 1 Tiger, 2 Yellow Marten, 1 Emerald Bird, 1 Black Sheep. So this is actually this ratio I've been playing for a long time in Lunalight, apart from the Black Sheep. But Black Sheep serves a couple of different purposes in this build. So because Tiger is still at 1 copy, if we do mill it off of our Tearlaments or our Curious or whatever, we do need a way to get it back should we find ourselves getting access to Tenki or Perfume. So we want to be able to search this because this can add back the Tiger from the graveyard. Additionally, a cool thing about this is that it's actually level 2, and you're going to notice I'm playing Spright Elf in this list. So there are scenarios where if you don't have to do that, or even if you do find yourself like discarding Black Sheep to recover a Tiger, you can actually send it to the grave via like a Kaleido Chick, bring it back off your Tiger, and then make a Spright Elf that way. So you can get Merrily on your opponent's turn and do those cool plays with Sulik and whatnot. So that's like another cool interaction with this. And I think that these cards are just really, really high value mills in general. You could actually consider maybe even cutting down on Kaleido Chick, as crazy as that sounds, because a lot of the time, like, you're not gonna be opening just like Lunalight combo without like Tearlaments. It is possible, but the way the deck is built, it still is at its very core a Tearlament deck. So the fact that you're gonna have to like rely on Chick as an opener play is not really as commonplace here as it would be in a more dedicated Lunalight focus build. But that being said, of course, this still is like the primary body that you want to get access to every game. So it's the one you want to be milling the most often, and therefore the one that we're maxing out on for the time being. I think everything else is fairly straightforward. Emerald Bird is, I think, the weakest one out of all of the Lunalights, just because it is the worst one to draw, for sure. Because like you need to pair it with another Lunalight name to even get value off of it being a normal summon. But even then, it still is a very weak normal summon. However, it is one of the stronger mills, provided you have other Lunalights in rotation. And the cool thing is that it's very, very hard to lose access to Tiger permanently, because even if your Tiger gets like Cosmic Cycloned, if you get access to Emerald Bird milled, you can just special summon the Tiger back and then bounce it with Yellow Marten. So that ends up being pretty good. Another reason to keep Emerald Bird in the list is that it is very, very good with Redoer. And Redoer is awesome as a card, similar to Curious, and that works well with both the Tearlaments and the Lunalights. So getting value there is really, really nice as well. But yeah, touching on Black Sheep a bit more here while we're at it still. Another cool thing you can do is like, if your Tiger gets popped somehow and goes to your face-up extra deck, something that you probably should know if you're going to play this build is you can actually send Tiger from your face-up extra deck to your graveyard with Kaleido Chick, because this doesn't just send from deck, but it also sends from extra deck. So you can send Tiger for the cost of Kaleido Chick and then add it back off Black Sheep if you do find yourself in that situation. Like maybe they field spell pop it in the mirror match or something like that. That is definitely something to be aware of. So yeah, I like the fact that all these cards can help get you to Tiger as well as more rank 4 plays. You have a lot of recovery if like you get hit with like again Cosmic or like Smashers or something on like your main grind tool. And this being like if they don't deal with this basically as part of their end board and they don't OTK you, then you're gonna have a lot of follow up. Just because this represents 3 bodies on its own every single turn at minimum. Which is extremely versatile in a deck that is as adept at link climbing and rank 4 generation as this one. We have 2 Tenki, a 3 Perfume, and 1 Serenade Dance. You'll see like right here in the side deck, it's not actually a side deck. I'll show you like what a sample side deck would look like at the end of the video. But yeah, I'm not playing Foolish Goods right here in this list, and that is something that I've been kind of wavering back and forth on. But I find that again, because you're not trying to necessarily start with the Lunalight pieces, this card's utility is not really as high as you would expect it to be, just because the Lunalights kind of come in again more towards the end of the combos. And again, there's not really any set variation of how you play your hands, just because of the nature of Tearlament. But I thought I'd kind of throw it out there that this card is, while it's good to be able to send not only Perfume and Serenade Dance, but also Select, which is nice, it's not actually necessary as a consistency tool, in my opinion. So you can definitely test it, and I would consider playing it, and I will still, kind of experiment with it. But for the time being, as of me recording this video right now, I don't think it's super necessary. But yeah, the rest of these I think is pretty self-explanatory. Perfume is an amazing mill. It just gets you to everything you need to. Tenki is again a very interesting card to evaluate in this deck, because a lot of the time you're not actually trying to start with the Lunalights. This card's best utility is like after you mill a bunch of stuff and you see that you've hit Kaleidoschick or like some combination of Martins and Emerald Birds, you just flip this up after resolving some dangers, and then you just search Tiger and you're just good to go from there, like if you don't hit a Perfume in that case. So like this card is not one of the stronger cards in the deck as far as consistency is concerned, but you can treat it as an extender more than anything else. One thing to know about Serenade Dance, by the way, is that its effect in Grave sends from your hand to the grave as part of an effect. So similar to Sheeran, it does trigger the Tearlaments. So this is really good to kind of work with the engine. If you mill Martin off of anything and then search this, and that's like a really valuable discard off Perfume, which gets you to your Tearlaments. If you have only one Tearlament name in hand, if you have a Tearlament name in hand rather that you want to trigger, I should say. So yeah, really good stuff. And I do enjoy this package. I think it's fairly condensed, but it's still a good amount of Lunalight names to where they make up a sizable portion of the deck. And then we have good mills to work with the engine, which is Zephyros as well as Fairy Tale Snow. Snow is obvious. This card is ridiculous. Zephyros is a card that is already seeing play in regular Danger Tearlament, and it is a mainstay staple in Lunalight. So this is a perfect inclusion here. This card is a way to bounce dangers. You can bounce Tiger. I've even found myself in scenarios where I don't bounce Tiger sometimes, and I actually go Tiger to bring back Black Sheep to go ahead and bounce it. When I was testing with fusion sub and stuff, I did some cool combos with that. I'll talk about this card a bit more later because it's very interesting. But yeah, Zephyros, very good extender. Helps me curious and stuff. Obviously, you have to be careful with Guerrera being a Darkwing Beast as well. I've seen a lot of people try to make curious with this and Guerrera in just normal danger tier. So just be cautious of that. And then we have dangers. So we have 3 Nessie, 1 Jackalope, 1 Tsuchinoko, and 1 Mothman. This could be played around with for sure. I don't exactly know what my ideal ratio would be for these. I know for sure I would want 3 Nessie because when I tested this deck, I find that a lot of the times if you don't play the dangers, sometimes you're a bit low on Aqua names to make Kakalos, which can be an issue. This just kind of helps in that department a little bit. And while it's not as problematic in this deck to kind of remove your bodies from field to fusion summon with, because you'll make up for the lost bodies later with your Tiger and your Kaleidoschick and stuff. You still want to be able to extract value. Plus, these cards are really good with both of the other engines of the deck, so you might as well play them. They all facilitate Curious again, which is pretty vital because sometimes you might get stuck in situations where you have just Beast Warriors and Aquas, and you kind of want a third type without burning through your Darker, Masquerade, and Needlessly. So this is kind of a good compromise of that. You could try maybe play more Mothman. You can try introducing like Bigfoot into the list. You could even like maybe experiment cutting Mothman, which I did for a little bit. I just like having the level 4 as the name to access off Jackalope or Nessie as necessary. So that's kind of the reason why it's still in the list, because it is really, really scary to trigger this card's graveyard effect if you miss with it. So yeah, do that at your own discretion, because in the tier mirror, that is definitely a risky call, although it can work depending on the situation. Other one-offs here, we have Foolish Burial and Instant Fusion. These are, I think, pretty self-explanatory. You could argue to cut Foolish Burial. It's not necessary with how much milling you're doing, but it is a reliable starter, and with your Lunalights wanting to be stepped in grave as well, you can do some interesting plays there. And then we have 3 Dark Rulers. So this is the part of the deck that I would like to work on the most, is integrating more DtheSecond cards if possible. Like the engine, of course, being Tearlament, is very, very adept at breaking boards just with engine cards. But it would be nice to be able to play something like Super Poly or Imperm in the main to kind of supplement these. And then lastly, we have Spell Cancellaries. So shout out to Hani. You guys have probably seen this list by now. This is kind of borrowing from the concept where you can just mill this off Curious and then bring it back off Dagaris, which this deck is extremely good at making Dagaris. You can make a Dagaris plus Dweller very, very routinely in the same turn. So like this like just completely shuts down Tearlament. And Spell Canceller helps you play really, really well against just the generic board breakers in the format. Oh, one other thing I actually forgot to mention is a very cool interaction with Snow in this deck specifically. I kind of glossed over it because it's broken, right? But to kind of go back to this, this has a very niche and cool interaction in this build specifically, where if you mill a Kaleido Chick and you have Snow in grave, and your opponent goes to their battle phase and they try to evenly match you, in their battle phase, you can actually Snow to banish the Kaleido Chick to trigger the banish effect of Kaleido Chick to lock out their battle phase for that turn. So they actually just can't evenly match you, which is cool. So between Spell Canceller and this interaction, you're safe from almost every board breaker in the format, which is very, very good. Pretty much you are then worried about things like Sphere Mode, Lava Golem, and stuff like that that can ruin your day. Which if they have it, they have it. We can't cover for everything, but we can cover for as much as we can, and this is a darn near widespread of everything that is very popular currently in the format. So yeah, this is kind of like my starting point. Again, feedback and suggestions are always welcome. You guys have been playing the format more than I have, so I welcome any sort of constructive feedback here. In the extra deck, we have 2 Kick Hallows. You could probably get away with 1. It's just that right now I'm still working on resource management, so I'm playing 2. I'm not gonna lie, that is totally the honest reason. But you probably could get away if you're a very experienced Tearlament player by now. You could probably get away with 1 of this. It's just that 2 is nice to have as an insurance policy should you get DD Crowed or should you get Smashered or something along those lines. 1 Kaleido Heart here. Obviously, 1 Guerrero, Mud Dragon, and Dragostapelia. This is the standard lineup here. And then Dweller, Redoer, and Dagaris. I would like to actually play more rank 4s. It's just kind of hard to fit everything that I want to. But these are the ones that I find come up the most. I already mentioned Redoer being synergistic with both the Tearlament portion and the Lunalight portion of the deck, which is a really, really appealing aspect to it. We have Dweller, which is a great card to have in the mirror. And then Dagaris, which is not only good to be max spell canceller, but also good to help fix weaker hands, and also good to go for OTKs in some interesting spots where you just want to make your Kaleido Heart really, really big. So yeah, really like that. Oh, one thing also, I'll mention that after I go through the rest of the extra deck actually. We have Masquerena, Spright Elf, which I talked about already briefly, Dark the Dark Charmer, which is pretty, I hear it's pretty strong in this format. Nightmare Unicorn, Curious, as well as Appaloosa. So yeah, I find that these are pretty good. I'm on Appaloosa right now. I guess this is one's worth talking about a little bit, just because I feel that because a lot of Tearlament players right now are just straight up not respecting hand traps, like Nibiru, for instance, that it could be a foreseeable trend in the future that people go back to trying to hand trap this deck, as we saw with the Oceanic first place list. So like this is kind of a good insurance policy, and worst case scenario, it just is another interruption piece to end on, which is never a bad thing. But yeah, everything else here I think is pretty good. You could maybe opt to cut the Spright Elf. It's not like a big necessity, but I do like being able to not like to be able to go back into having a tier monster on your opponent's turn to make your Select live if you just had to link away everything, because you can get into this with your Lunalight portion with the Black Sheep. So I think like that's one of the coolest things is, you don't have to worry about your management of tiers on the board necessarily if you can find yourself getting access to a Black Sheep on the field to link into Elf and fix that, which makes it a little bit more forgiving. But also like you can manage your resources intentionally in a different sort of way. So I really do like that aspect of this. So to get back to what I was going to say earlier, I am not playing the Lunalight Fusion, sadly. Panther Dancer and Leo Dancer, as much as I love them. I didn't want to introduce Wolf into the deck as another like brick going first, and also there's just not enough space as is. And the deck doesn't struggle too hard without OTKing. It can be a little like weird to find certain lines, but I think in general OTKing is not an issue with this deck. So even though like you can boost it to 4K with Parallel Rhino and just get a lot of damage in with Leo Dancer, it's not really super necessary. All right, so now I have to talk about the things here in the side deck, which are other ideas that I am very much experimenting with, still like very, very actively. And these are by no means cards that I would just out of the question rule out. These are like very, very interesting options, and they all have their merits. So let's talk about them. So first up is Foolish Burial Goods. I briefly mentioned this already. Being able to send Perfume, Serenade Dance, and Sullick is very, very strong. If you want to main deck Galaxy Cyclone, that's like another way to reliably get it in there, which is good. But again, I do find that the deck already is consistent enough. And so this is not super needed to like boost consistency even further. But it is a pretty solid option. And for those of you guys out there who don't want to spend all the money to buy Parallel Rhinos, spoiler alert, I don't own my copies yet. You can play this as like a very, very, I guess, mediocre substitute for the time being, which is probably what I'll end up doing for locals until I actually buy this card. But yeah, that is kind of my thoughts on that. Galaxy Cyclone is a card that I think was staple in tier prior to Euros, and then B-Cop kind of got discovered, as well as like other ways like Runic to protect mine and stuff. And then it just gets out of hand really quickly. So this card fell out of favor a bit, but I would still consider it somewhere in the list as a way to still hedge against mine. High rate draw is kind of like a similar thing, where shouts to Nesh actually for posting about this on Twitter a while back. But yeah, this card is also like really, really good to be able to just clear your own board and help mitigate mine. It's nice to be able to tutor any of these with Curious, or if you play Foolish Goods, you can do it that way as well. So the next card in here is actually Fusion Substitute, and this one, in my opinion, is a really, really interesting inclusion, and one that I had in the deck for a while, and I might put it back in the foreseeable future. So this card is searchable via the Black Sheep because it is always treated as poly, of course, similar to King of the Swamp in other tier builds. But the advantage in this deck is very interesting, and that is the fact that you can recycle this very, very easily. So, of course, if you have to, you can use it as like your pseudo mine out or your way to deal with mine, or you can use it for the draw just to get more cards if you need to. But if you have your Lunalight Engine established and rolling, what you can do is you can use Tiger to bring back your Kaleido Chick, and you can like use your bounces like Martin and stuff to rescale Tiger and bring back Emerald Bird. And they can do something like activate Fusion Substitute to fuse from your field. So you can fuse away the Kaleido Chick and the Emerald Bird into something like a Garura. And then you can go ahead and use both of these cards' effects, because Kaleido Chick actually is a third effect that people don't often use, which is if this card's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target a polymerization in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. So you add back the Fusion Substitute, and also this triggers if it gets milled, notably. So you can add back your poly or your Fusion Sub off of the Kaleido Chick, and then the Emerald Bird would also trigger to bring back your Kaleido Chick that you fused with. And so suddenly you actually have another fusion activation you can do with those two, and then you can turn those into something like Yugioh Sepelia, which is really, really cool. So in my opinion, I think it's like a really awesome way to get Yugioh Sepelia onto the board without having to worry about using your tier fusion or your tier names to like solely get into it, because there are times where maybe you want or don't hit all three of them, or like you go through Kikalos and then like maybe you have to like go for a Mud Dragon play to like go for a Jagara setup later. Like that's not really super likely, to be honest, but maybe that comes up, or maybe you like want to prioritize Kaleido Hearts because Kaleido Heart reviving with Sullick is extremely strong. So yeah, like this offers like another way to kind of utilize the Lunalight Engine and facilitate some of like the I guess tier focused end boards, if that makes sense. Not really focused, but you know what I mean, like a more fusion oriented end board. And so that is a really, really cool thing you can do, and it's something that I would very much consider if you wanted to pick up this deck. Force Tricks is a card that I had in this list for the first like early stages, and I still kind of want to put it back in. This was before I kind of found Hani's list with Spell Canceller, and that's why I replaced it with Dugaris. But this card, obviously searching Zephyros, is really, really strong. It kind of helps you when you have like, say, a tier name on board. If you didn't open with Dangers, for instance, like if you have a tier name on board and like you're going through your Lunalight plays, then you easily get to, you know, Force Tricks plus tier name plus Beast Warrior, and then that's a very, very easy Curious. So yeah, I do like that quite a lot. Also, if you don't have a tier to trigger off your Serenade Dance, then you know, this is classic Lunalight things that we've been doing for 3 years now. But it would be Perfume, pitch Serenade Dance to go search, and then Serenade Dance, go ascend Zephyros to the grave to summon another body from deck. And then this gets you more activations of Tiger, of course, and just keep going from there. So very, very strong, but it might not be necessary just because, again, you don't often begin with your Lunalights in this deck. So like you don't really need to like bridge into this to be able to kind of like start. But if there is a scenario where you want your Lunalights to feed into your Tearlaments, this could help out with that. Just being able to get more bodies to help make Curious, because I can see a world where like, if you open maybe like a Chick Perfume type of route, you can like go normal Chick, effect to send Martin, Perfume back the Martin, you can overlay into this, add Zephyros, and then you can go pitch the Zephyros off of a Perfume to add Tiger, and you can like go special summon off of Tiger. You can like make a Masquerena or something, and then you can bounce with Martin, summon back off Tiger, bounce with Zephyros, and then you have Masquerena plus 2 other types to make Curious that way. So kind of just some ideas that I have floating around my head. But yeah, this can help facilitate that kind of play, which is pretty good. And I guess I should talk about these while I'm at it, because it's kind of a similar topic. Kagetsuchi as well as Minerva are other options to consider as cards that read, like if you start with Lunalights, you can get into your tier names. I just don't find myself using these whenever like I had them in the deck. Like I get that in concept it's really strong, and like, you know, a card that's basically, you know, its own. I wouldn't want to say Chaos Ruler because it's not a fair comparison, but a card that helps you get to your tier pieces is really, really appealing, of course. But you know, again, because I'm starting with tiers in pretty much every hand since I started playing this deck, I don't find it necessary to try and bridge the other way around. So I didn't find that these were super necessary. Also, the fact that these are not darks to make Curious is a little disappointing, because that would make these a lot better, especially like if Minerva was a dark, which why would it be a dark? It's a Lightsworn. But you know what I mean. This would be the argument to play this over Kagetsuchi, by the way, is it would be easier to make with, you know, if you want to play more Mothman, or like more ways to access it, or like if you had, you know, a tier plus like Collider Chick, for instance. Like maybe open Sheer and Collider Chick plus like a body to discard. That could be something. So yeah. Oh, I have timed out due to inactivity. Let's go and log back in. So we have Zeus as well. Oh, I actually skipped this portion, but let's talk about Zeus very briefly. It makes sense to play Zeus if you want to. Not a lot of tier players right now are doing it, but if you are a fan of Zeus and tier, then this is something you can definitely do. One cool thing about Kagetsuchi is the fact that it has a protection effect as well for itself, just itself in this deck. So you could kind of just attack into stuff without fear of it getting outed, unless if it's going to get banished by like a Smashers or something. But you protect it and then just overlay Zeus on top of it, or you can like Dweller and then Zeus, which is very classic. So yeah, this is another consideration for sure. Back to the Griffin plus, you know, things to set off Griffin. Yeah, this is something I also thought about as well. I was kind of tinkering around with the idea of using Kikalos to, instead of like add Merely or Rhinoheart and then like tag into these and then get their effects as well as the mill 5. What you could do is you could like go Kikalos to mill Celic. Like if you don't have like enough tiers to work with and you can't just search the Celic, you can Kikalos to mill the Celic to add whatever you're going to add regardless. Do the same play, but then when you get to your like later stages of the combo, you can just simply go Griffin to reset the Celic, and that is a pretty good way to get this online, because I think that if not for like Spell Canceller, this is the main way that you have to play around Dark Ruler, especially. Yeah, and when you get Dark Ruler with this up, like you actually feel very, very confident that not only are you going to live, obviously because Dark Ruler, but you will have enough follow-up to be able to actually just break through their board and win on the next turn. So that is definitely something to think about. If you are not a fan of the Spell Canceller route, you can try this route as well. I think that both are, you know, foreseeably quite viable. I just have to kind of test more and see which one I actually like as the format continues to mature. We have, of course, the viruses. People know about these, of course. Not gonna spend too much time on them, but this deck isn't really doing like the plays of ending on like gigantic Spright with like the very small Spright package, like to go like Jet Smashers and stuff. So you don't have like the free 3200 gigantic to like be able to trigger these super easily. So you have to go a little bit out of your way for them, which is why I'm not as big of a fan. But you definitely could still try them. They are quite good. And then we have some game enders here slash more power cards. So access code, Zero Boros, and then Gizmic to kind of supplement the Zero Boros, and then also Desires I kind of threw in here as more like banished type cards. Yeah, there are definitely times I miss access code. I'm not gonna lie, because access code is a very very clean and easy way to like help simplify the game. And actually, this is gonna be a really weird reason to want to include access code, but I think one of the reasons is that it helps you to take less time like in like an actual tournament setting to end the game. And I imagine a lot of people go into time with this deck, especially like if there's a mirror, because there's a lot of different lines and turns can last a lot of time. It's very complex, and routes diverge based on what you hit. So yeah, having just a very clean way to end the game is something that's pretty appealing to me, just because it saves a lot of time on the clock, and you can get more time in to be able to manage games 2 and 3, and that's actually something that I don't take lightly. It's something that I think is pretty important. Zero Boros and Gizmic. I don't want to play Gizmic and Desires in this deck for similar reasons, and that's because Tiger is a very core focus of the deck. So if you banish it, and half of your deck's pretty much invalidated, so I didn't want to do that. But if you're playing regular Danger Tier, this card's very good, of course, and this is like just another win button. I don't find myself using this as a primary form of interruption, and so there's actually a case like maybe you don't even have to play Masquerade Unicorn necessarily, because a lot of my M boards tend to consist of like Appaloosa, like the rank 4s, like Spell Canceller, and then like Sulic with some sort of like way to get Collider Heart onto the board eventually, whether it be ending on the Collider Heart straight up or just redo or tagging into it with like Sheer underneath and stuff. And then like maybe like Elf, if it gets to that point, swapped out for something. So yeah, I don't think that Zero Boros ever was a big part of like the win condition for the end board, but it is something to kind of think about if you want to go down that direction as well. Definitely a viable option. So here I'm going to show like a sample list like with a side deck included. This is like this I've not played in a like tournament setting yet, so obviously you guys can definitely let me know what is the trends right now. But here's kind of my thought process. I do want to play cards that help you beat Dweller in the mirror match, because if you get Dweller, one of the downsides of the Lunalight portion is that you play harder into it, because Lunalight back in 2019 against Salad, one of the reasons why Salad was a bit of a tricky matchup was nothing that Salad cards did, but if they ended on Dweller, you're just very very sad. And so that kind of continues here, where yeah, if you get Dwellered, you're just kind of done. So these cards kind of all achieve the same thing, and then these are like kind of outs to Mystic Mine, and then also like Fluanderies is still sort of popular-ish. Not as popular, but like, it's still around. So kind of want to respect it a bit. And then Reboot obviously for trad decks. And I think that this card does unfortunately have to dedicate one side deck slot for the time sort of element of the game. You don't want to use this if you can help it, but I think that this or like Skullmark Ladybug or something probably should be in the list at some to some degree. Just because I already like I'm still learning the deck very much, and right now when I'm like testing with friends, I'm taking far too much time, and even if I like get to the level where I can like think through my plays substantially more quickly, it's still going to take a long time. I can already tell, and you guys can let me know in the comments below if you've had experiences where you've had to go into time a lot with any Tearlament build. But yeah, that's going to do it for this deck profile here. We are running at 32 minutes. That is par for the course. Some things don't change, right? But thanks, guys, again for sticking with me. I know I take breaks like this more often than a YouTuber probably should. But if I'm not enjoying the game a lot, then it's not in my best interest to force myself to make content. It's not good for you guys to watch at home. It's not the greatest. It's not fun for me to do. So hopefully you guys can understand that. And I will say that this time, for certain, I will actually be back on the content grind, because this deck I'm excited to play. I will take any excuse I have to play Lunalight cards, even if it was a little bit of cope. I still think that there are like this deck has some legs. And there's definite potential for this deck to be explored and to be improved upon further, which I look forward to doing very much in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. And until next time, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.